So in the previous lecture, we have seen how to configure a REST GET connector. Before I move to the DB connector, I want to also state few things that you can do inside a script. So this is a normal script. Let me close this. Let me go back to the same one which we have seen earlier. So this is a REST connector, right? So inside that, once in the final step where we are extracting data from the JSON, you might have noticed that I have used something called loggers. So the way you use loggers in your script would be something like this. So you will import this particular jar, which is like Java util logging logger, and then you will use logger.getLogger, and you need to use a class name called org.bonitasoft. This will make sure that at the runtime Bonita understands that okay, this is the class where you're gonna set for this script, and then you can log these values there. So I have used logger.severe weather here. So this will be in your server logs. So the way you configure the level of logging, that would be in your logging.properties in your Tomcat Bonita. There you can configure what level of logging you want. Generally it is info. The other one which I want to say is you can use try catch just like in your Java, right? So to capture any exceptions. Exception E, and then you can do a return e.getMessage. I'm just showing you so that you can customize it based on your requirement. So for example, if there is no element, if there is a server or something like you got a response but there is no element in your list, if you want to gracefully exit this without getting to fail step, you might set it to return no data found, something like that, right? So and then you can also log your message in the logger. So logger.severe, and then you will put your message there, logger.severe, and you'll use logger e.getMessage. So this way you actually get to know from where you're getting it, and you can like go more into the details, like from which script, from which process, etc. You can do that. I think you got that part. If you want to specifically access anything that Bonita provides you, that would be here. So here you have access to the process definition ID, root process instance ID. So you can say that an error occurred for this root process instance ID. I would say process instance ID would be good, because root means it would be if you have parent, then it will get the case ID of the parent. So you better choose with the process instance ID. Say that for this process instance ID, I got this exception, or for this script so and so. So you can go as much detail as you want for your logging. Logging well in your scripts will be your first step in your investigating the root cause analysis of your exceptions, right? So I just wanted to tell you that before I move to the database connectors. So you can do just like in your Java, you can use try catch, and the logging will be done something like this. If you have external loggers, then you can configure it. So how to add external dependencies into your process would be in the same, you go to configure section here, and it opens you widget where you have something called Java dependencies, right? In the Java dependencies, here if you see in the other section, I have already added h2 jar. The way you add is you click here and you click on add. That populates you with all the provided jars. If not, you may import it from your local file system, right? It opens a pop-up like this, and you can add the jars there. So here you can add in this way, and if you want to see raw view like this, and you may also choose like which particular jars are required for a particular process. So you can upload all the jars at one place in your server, in your local server, which would be your local Bonita, and from there you may choose like which jar is required in your process by selecting, deselecting, etc. Okay, with that done, let's move to the next step. DB connectors. So DB connectors, as they say, these are connectors which are used to connect with external databases and fetch the responses. Now the way you do it would be like any typical connection, right? When we are doing a Postgres connection, we have provided the URL, the port, username, password, etc. Right? So in this demo, I'm gonna connect with our journal DB. If you remember, journal DB is DB that's inbuilt DB provided H2 database. So it stores all the data about our case variables, etc. So I also mentioned that it is not easy to connect to your journal database as opposed to your business data. So for example, if you want to connect to business data, you go to development, click on business data model, and then browse data H2 console. So this, if you remember, it opens a browser with this, right? So oops, let me open it again. Server, development, business data, define, sorry, not define. Alright, it's not defined. We go to development, business data model, browse data H2. So this opens URL in your browser that would be with your H2, and once that loads, you will see a JDBC URL, and that it will have information like which table to connect, etc. So let it load. Alright, so at this point it already took the configurations from your Bonita Studio and Bonita Server XML and got logged in directly without even asking. But for you to connect to Journal DB, you will not be able to directly connect like this. So what you need to do is you have to manually do that. So the way you do it is you go to your Tomcat in your Bonita Studio, in the workspace section. There's a Tomcat folder. Inside Tomcat you have something called setup. Inside the setup you have lib. Inside the libs you have different type of jars that are used. So here you have H2 jar. So if you are using Mac or Linux, what you do is you go to this path and then open your command prompt and run java-jar and then this jar. Because this is Windows, I can just double click it, but I'll just show you how to do that even in the Windows if you want to go in manual the command way. So you just use java-jar and then you do write this H2 and then let me so you do that and okay, so it's java-jar. Yep. So when you do this, what happens is it will run this particular jar and you will see a small H2 database in the bot and it will automatically app with that H2 console configuration details here. So you can also click on this icon in the bottom in your task list and get to the H2 console. That also opens the similar URL. So at this point we are just started a H2 database, but once it comes up we have to manually configure as to where to connect to. So here you will select generic H2 embedded and generic H2 embedded. So this is just to show you how to connect your H2 Journal DB. This is a step which is required for you to do it because we need to find this JDBC URL. So how to connect to this JDBC URL is if you go to your workspace again and then Tomcat, and this time you go to the server, and inside the server you have a configuration. Inside conf you have Catalina, inside Catalina you have localhost, and here is where you have Bonita XML. If you remember the Tomcat bundle installation, this is where we have configured the Postgres right in that particular var. This is something we did not mess up because we have a separate var and we did our test there to connect to Postgres. So this one, Bonita XML, actually has H2. So let me open it and show you. So once I open here, you see that we have something called this journal data DB, right? So but if you see here, there is no path provided. So this path would be something like this. In your machine, you have to configure based on your path. So I will just show you in my machine how it is. So if I go to this particular path, see Bonita Studio, workspace, and your project, and the H2 database folder, right? If you click on that, here is where you will have your both BDM, business data, as well as your Journal DB. Journal DB is where it will have all the information about process definition, cases, case information, etc. Business data would be all your business data like claims database, which we created, or pen database, which we have done in the earlier lectures, right? So you know how to see business data, but seeing Journal DB, earlier I mentioned that you need to shut down your current environment, Tomcat, only then you can view it. But there's a way for you to access this Journal DB while the current Tomcat is running. So that would be something like this. So you go there and use this configuration. I'll provide this in the resources section of this video. So you have to use this particular link to connect to H2. So you will paste here, right? Once that is done, you need to do test connection. So if that is successful, then you're good to go, right? If not, you need to make sure that this particular URL is correct as per your thing. And username is default SA, password is empty. So I'm going to connect it. So at this point, if you see, it got connected successfully and my Tomcat is still running. That's a good thing, right? Earlier we were not able to do that. So once you see this, you see all the familiar looking tables here. So what I did in this demo is, let me go back to connectors demo. Let me close others so that we'll keep it simple. This is DB connector, right? So I just went in the general section. I did an add. So in the add, what I did is I clicked on H2. So H2 gives you one connector definition. If you have Postgres, you can do the Postgres and you get right, you get Postgres related definitions here. So I chose to stick with H2 because that is what we are working since beginning. I use this particular one. Once you click this and click on next, you'll see something like this, right? You'll be presented with the name and the same configuration. So almost all connectors look same. I have like very old document of say version 5.6 where they have defined how all the connectors are definitions are. So I will try to upload that in this same resources section, and maybe it will be helpful for you when you're doing that. I also provide you a link. If you want to develop your own custom connector, you may choose to follow that Bonito official link, documentation link, where they will provide you step-by-step information on how to create your own connectors, right? So let's get forward. So here I just kept connector fails, read fail, and then the next here you will be presented with this particular H2 thing, right? So by default you should have this jar. If not, you know where to search it. Just now I showed you that you should go to your setup libs, and in there you'll have that jar, right? Once that is active, and then you click on next, here is where the same configurations we did earlier, right? Org H2 driver and that URL which we did, and then username and password. And then here is where you will define your query. Now let me run this query so that we'll quickly see what we are going to expect from the response. So if I go here, I run this particular query. So it presented me this long list of process definitions. So process definitions are all your processes that are installed in your Tomcat server. So at this point, in my machine, all this installed. So in your machine, it might not be, right? So based on your data, it will be represented here. And you see that for every process, you have a process ID and defined version. And also it tells you whether it's active, enabled or disabled, and what type, whether it's resolved or you have some issues with it, and if there are any optional description to it. So this is what the query returns when I run that. However, what I'm extracting is not everything. So if I go to the next one, it gives me a graphical mode and a scripting mode. These both are same, but I choose mostly scripting mode because it allows me to write my own custom query or custom extraction methods. So I just used a normal Java way of dealing with result set. So what I did is I just took a list, which is an array list, and then I'm saying that if result set, which is what I'm gonna get from this response, I'm checking if there's any value, then add to that particular list, right? And I'm just fetching the name and version of the process as opposed to entire thing. So in the result set, I will have access to tenant ID, and all the columns, but I restricted myself to name and version, right? And then finally return me a list, right? So this is what you'll expect. So this is what you get, and this is error prone. As you can see, I might not, maybe the database is down and this can get into exception state. So you can do try catch, and you can make it like a fail safe, etc., right? Whichever you want to do, you can do that, no stopping you. One other thing which I want to tell you is in the query as well as the script mode. So the scripts, you know how to access the variable, right? If I go to switch editor, let me do that. If I go to the script editor, it gives me a familiar looking script. So here, you know, like these are the 4 options you can use. So in the script, you do like select star from process, so that would be this, right? Let me copy that. So you don't need to write returns, so whatever is the last line, that is considered as a return statement in Groovy. So you can just do that and do OK, right? It works. There's other way to do this, so that would be your query selector. What is the difference between the both is in the script you can access the process variables just like you are using normally from your drop down, right? You will just use plus and you will use drop down. But in the query batch, how you use it, if you want to access a process variable, that would be something like this. So right, select star from table where, say for example, the ID is equal to some process variable, then the process variable will be defined in this construct. So dollar and then open curly brace, and then inside that you'll put your process variable and close. The one disadvantage with the query editor is you will not have access or know that what is the process variable. So for example, if I open here, there's no way for you to know the process variable without cancelling or closing this and going to pull process variable and then search it, right? So that is a disadvantage. However, if you want to choose, if you have simple scripts like mine, then if you want to go with query editor and if you know the process variable, then you would use something like this. You enclose your process variable within the dollar, curly brace and open brace, right? This is how you use if you want to use query editor. I would suggest you can always use your script, and it's very easy for you to if you have a complex query, then you would write something and you can get the values from your process variable. So this would be more easy for you if you are having a complex query which requires multiple variables to be referred here, right? So let me keep it as is for now. I'm clicking on cancel, so this whatever I did will not be saved, right? So let's check back if I'm right or not. So let's see, I just cancel and all this data is intact and the query is intact, so we are good here. So now that we have understood what is DB connector and how to configure it for H2, right, let's try to run this and see. So as you can see, I kept an interrupting timer at the end just to make sure that this instance doesn't end. But because we have connection to journal DB, I think even if this process ends, we can still see the variables. All right, let's run this. Let me run this. So now we need to run the REST connector first and then DB connector, and we will fetch the process name and version of that table. Because these both are automated tasks, you might not have any user tasks to do or user intervention to be done. So the process will just execute and then wait for the timer to complete. Right, so I'm just starting it. There's no form for this process instantiation form, so I'm just starting it. Let me go to the cases section. So here we have connectors demo case, and you see that both of them are done. And the interesting thing is, this is what we got. So we got that result list is Java util list, and I see that SF weather test doesn't have any value. So let me go back and see what is happening there. Right, so and I want to show, before I go there, let me actually go to this process. I want to show you the parameters, how do they look in the process level. I go back to the process, click on this process now. If I go to the more, I should have an option to check my parameters. So this is the parameter we have we have used. Alright, so this seems like an HTTPS URL. Alright, so this is HTTPS. Okay, so maybe this could be a reason because we have used only HTTP in our connector configuration. However, let me look at the case as well. So far you understood that I was able to extract the at least the database information to some variable, right? So if you see, I have made process name and version, and you have connector G pool and version is 1.0 and catch signal process 1.0. So you understand, right? All the processes, I have just took the process name and version. We will see why that light rain didn't come up. Now let me go there. So I see the connector for the rest here, and then the connector out. All right, so we go back and let me see that. Alright, so it seems like I have created a business data here, and that's the reason why I'm not seeing it. If it's a process variable, I would have seen it, right? Because the process variable is SF weather test. So for me to see if the data is there or not, I need to go to the business data. So let me see that. So in the H2 console, weather data, I'm going to run this. Alright, seems like I have a lot of data, but the latest one is 98 and it has light rain. So we have successfully added that particular value. Seems like I initially thought of showing it in the process variable, but I wanted to also reiterate or re-talk about the business data configuration, so I might have moved it forward. So let me show you the business data. Right, let me go here in the business data. So I have configured a small data here. So weather, as you can see. So the weather data has just one attribute called status. So whatever the information is coming from that connector's demo call, I'm setting it back to that. So if I go to the execution, get weather SF info, the last section, if you remember. Okay, so I'm saying a set status, so whatever the value, it is going to be added to the status, and that status would be light rain here, right? So as you can see, this got done now. So 7198, so the last one is the one which ran just now. So we have successfully did a REST GET call, and captured the value into the business data, and then for the result set from the database, H2 database, we captured it and the value is stored here. So as you can see, we have done both, unintentionally maybe or intentionally I have done that. So but the first is we have extracted the weather data and set it to the business data variable status, and then set the result list into the process variable. So we have seen both now, business data as well as result set. As you can see, I still have access to this. So now that we have this, we can actually check the data as well. So previously I was not able to show you all these things because I didn't figure out a way to connect to the existing DB, general DB, while the Tomcat is running. So now I think I should have access to the data. So that would be from data underscore instance. So this one is like I'm doing for the active one, as it is 2 minutes timer. I'm thinking that it should be done by now. Yeah, as expected, it is completed. So I need to check in the archive data instance to fetch the list. Right, so here is my arc data instance, where ID, where container ID equal to this. If I'm not wrong, this should fetch me all the variables in my process. Right, so as you can see, the SF weather test is null. The result list is here. However, if I go to the right, because it's a large value, it's stored in the club. Right, it's of type list, and you have string, process name, and the that value is string type, and then string. So you see that the value here, although we represent it as a list, it is stored in the form of an XML, right? So I see that it's of type XML object. And you can see that there are two mentions of result list. This is why, because the arc data instance is archive of data instance. Data instance would be your process data information, right? So I'm checking for the result list what are all changes happened from the instance creation to its end. So initially it was null, and then after the database connection has been done and we recovered the result set and extracted the version and process, it got updated to this particular way. So if you want to see a log of all the changes of your variable data, this is the place you go to the arc data instance, and container ID would be your case ID, right? This is how you search it. So you have access to all these things and you can explore it. The more you explore the tables, the more comfortable you will feel while you're designing the process, or even when you're doing a root cause analysis. Knowing the tables would be a very good advantage for you. Okay, with that said, we will talk about email connector in the next lecture. See you there.